Turks or all kind of Muslims, they love to speak about God, and this is in their normal way of life, everyday life. So it's very easy to come and to have conversations about your belief. Lots of people here are really fed up with Islam. So we have lots of people coming to church and searching, and the internet is full. Because of Corona, the church started to have their Zoom meetings and stuff. So also some of them have really every Sunday over YouTube. You can watch the services.
Jesus never promised his followers an easy path. In fact, he told his disciples that the world would hate them. He sent them out as sheep among wolves. Jesus' words came true in the life of the apostles, and they're still coming true today in the lives of his followers around the world. Join host Todd Nettleton as we hear their inspiring stories and learn how we can help. Right now on the Voice of the Martyrs Radio Network.
Welcome again to the Voice of the Martyrs Radio. My name is Todd Nettleton. We are connected today remotely with Susanne Geske. Susanna is the widow of Tilmann Geske, who was martyred in 2007 in the city of Malatya, Turkey. Susanna, welcome to Voice of the Martyrs Radio. Thank you for being willing to share with us this week.
Hello and good morning.
Let's go back to the very beginning. Can you kind of share how God called you and Tilmann to serve him, but then also to serve him in Turkey, in a Muslim country?
It started with me while I was in Bible school. We had people praying for Muslim people, and we had contact to Muslim people in a nearby city. So that started during Bible school, and my husband was doing his studies in Indonesia in a Muslim area.
How much of an adjustment was it when you actually got to Turkey and settled in? Was it stressful? Was it hard, or did it just work very smoothly?
I don't have a remembrance that we really had lots of stress. And of course, you try to learn the language and have lots of things when you don't know how to do it and how to do things. But for me, it wasn't so stressful.
What about as Christians and as people who want to do outreach and want to share about Jesus? Obviously, Turkey's a Muslim country. Was that very sensitive? Was that difficult, or did that just come up naturally?
The thing is, because we are foreigners and from the West, they actually expect you to be Christians. They think everyone in the West is a Christian. So if you go on a playground or somewhere where people are, and you talk and they ask you, where do you come? And then they right away know that you're Christian. And Turks or all kind of Muslims, they love to speak about God. And this is in their normal way of life, everyday life. So it's very easy to come and to have conversations about your belief.
Let's move ahead to 2007. How long had you been in Turkey? When did you first move there?
97. So we were nearly 10 years in Turkey.
Okay. Were there threats? Did you sense like this is dangerous, or were you just kind of living your life and thought, everything's fine?
It was a time when from the state and from the media, people who were Christian would have a really bad reputation. They would say these bad people, they take your young people and brainwash you, and they do all kind of bad things you can imagine. So that was always in the press. But the people around us, they were totally different. So we never had problems with people or had threats. We had here in the city, the pastor and the youth pastor, they also went to meet people who wanted someone to connect as a Christian. So they would go there and bring Bibles to them, bring literature to them. And that sometimes caused trouble. So that people said, oh, police came, or also the media always had something to write, but never really true things. But yeah, also before we even came to Malatya, the day before we moved, our friend who moved here earlier, he phoned us and said to us, oh, congratulations, you made it on the first page of the newspapers. So they made just up a story. My husband had a company for German and English classes. And then the other guy had a company. So he mixed everything, was mixed in this newspaper. But it was on the front page saying, these bad people are coming to our city.
So before you ever got there, there was a newspaper story about it? Wow.
Yes.
So did you have any second thoughts about moving to Malatya when that happened, or?
No, not not at all. We were quite used to, secret services everywhere, and yeah, they know what you're doing, so never mind.
So it's just a regular part of your life. You really don't think about
Yeah,
it that much.
no.
That's hard for us to kind of comprehend, that you just kind of go on and don't worry about it. We're talking today on Voice of the Martyrs Radio with Susanne Geske. She has been working in Turkey since 1997. Her husband Tilmann was killed in 2007. How did you hear that morning in April of 2007? How did you hear that there had been an attack? How did you hear what had happened?
I was at home. It was like midday, and my neighbor came over and she said, they always have the television on. So she came to me and said, oh, something must have happened here in Malatya. An American died and he was killed and something terrible. And can it be your people? And I was like, I don't know an American in Malatya. So then she came again and said, yeah, I'm not so sure. And then phone calls started to come. So do you know where your husband is? Do you know where my husband is? Stuff like this. And I was like, this is strange. So we got my two little kids from school, and then my elder was in another school. She came later. And then we started really to search and figure out what has happened. And we didn't know where our husbands were. So we found all the hospitals, and then close to our old house, there was a hospital. So we went there. I went there with my two kids, and they just right away put us in a little space and said, oh, wait there, we tell you. And they never came, and the police was outside, and we were waiting and praying. And then I saw this guy talking to somewhere else, like whispering around. And I was like, okay, he knows something. So I went out and said, so do you know something? No, we don't know anything. Said, you know something, tell me. And I really grabbed him. You normally shouldn't do this with a Turkish guy. I grabbed him and said, tell me the truth, dead or alive. I really just wanted to know that one. And then he said, no, your husband died.
What were your emotions in those first? Was it shock? Was it just like, how did you even process that?
It was just too much. It was just shock, I would say. And they brought me to the police station because of security reasons. My kids went with friends home. So I only came home then in the evening.
And how did your kids receive the news?
Yeah, they were shocked too. They were crying. And I just remember that they went home and I had to go to the police station. And then in the evening when I came home, the home was filled with people and my kids were there. My older daughter was there. She came home in between. And it was just crowded with people.
One of the really amazing things about your story is just how quickly you gave forgiveness, and even publicly to the press, to the media, said, I forgive these men. I don't hold this against them. How did you get there so quickly? I think a lot of our listeners would say, this is like literally within hours, you're on TV saying, I forgive them. How did God help you to get there so quickly?
That was the next day. Lots of pastors of Turkey came. In the morning, they had a press conference, and then afterwards, they were all in my living room sitting there. And we were all sitting there, and my head was empty, like foggy, nothing, no thoughts, just, sitting there.
Shock,
and
really.
Then, really shocked. And then there was the doorbell rang, and the media people came and said they want to talk to me. And I said, no way, I don't want to talk. I don't know what to say. What can I say? So then one of the pastors said to me, see, we always want to get the gospel to get out. So maybe this would be a good opportunity. And that was like someone switched me on again. And I was like, yeah, okay. But what do I say? I had no idea. I really had no idea. And so I sat there and prayed really a quick prayer, asking the Lord, what can I say? Because he promised to give us the words we should say. And then I had the impression like, when in the Old Testament it said with Moses, and the Lord spoke to Moses, I always was wondering how that happened. But I think this is exactly what happened to me. It's like the Lord spoke to me, forgive them because they don't know what they've done. And was like, oh, that was what Jesus said on the cross. So I was like, okay, if he wants for me to do this, I will do this. But this was just really obeying the words of the Lord, just obeying what he said to me. But because of this, afterwards, lots of people came to interview, and I had also a live thing in the television where I thought, okay, when they cut, but they can't really cut in between, What you said is out. So I just said that I really forgave because Jesus forgave me, because Jesus died on the cross for me, and he forgave my sins. And then after he died on the cross, he rose again, and this is why we can have life. And then I remember the guy looked at me and said, can you explain it a bit better? So this kind of opportunities really happen.
Did you see that instantaneously? Like, look at this terrible thing that's happened. My husband's been killed, but look what God is doing. Like, he's opening these amazing doors because of this.
We had always church in our house. So one Sunday I said, it's so strange that all these newspaper guys come and everyone wants to talk to me. And then one of the men said to me, but you remember, he was there one Sunday, and it happened to be the same Sunday that he was there. You talked about the dream you had. And it's true, I had a dream long before the things happened. And it was exactly about that the people with the television and this microphone come up to me and asked me, so, and you know about your life and you know about light, can you tell us about it? And what was I dreaming, what I dreamt? And I was like, what on earth is this? So the Lord, he knows.
We're talking today on Voice of the Martyrs Radio with Susanne Geske. She has worked in Turkey since 1997. You mentioned earlier the fact that, you guys were from Germany. When you would meet people on the street, they would assume you're Christians because you're Westerners, you're foreigners. For Necati and Ugur, they were Turkish. They were assumed to be Muslims, but here they were Christians. How much impact did that have on Turkish people to realize, hey, these guys were Turkish and they were Christians and they died for their faith?
I'm not so sure about the non-believing people here in the country. They just said they're crazy. This is their fault. They do stuff like this. But for the Christians, for the one part, they were really afraid. And for the other part, they said, okay, if these people die for Jesus, then I go out and preach the gospel. I don't care. So we had both sides.
The 5 men who committed the murders, they actually were captured at the scene. And yet the trial just went on and on and on. It seemed like, from an outsider's perspective, it just seemed like it went on for years and years. What was the end result as far as the trial?
Actually, not what we really wanted, because we wanted to get the people behind the 5 guys, because everyone know.
Yeah. We should say for our listeners, the 5 guys who were arrested were 19 and 20 and 21 years old. So they were not like grown men who came up with this plan all on their own. So now go ahead and share.
Yeah. There must have been people behind them who influenced them, who told them what to do. And so we're trying to figure out who were the people, what happened. But the lawyers really, really, really tried hard. And there were some judges who also tried hard, but then they always changed the judges, they changed other people. So it dragged on and on and on. And in the end, really not something came out. It was just the 5 guys, and others had some little other things, but not really who was behind it.
You mentioned the idea that some Muslims had about the 2 Turks who were killed, that they kind of got what they deserved. Hey, they should have stayed Muslim, then this wouldn't have happened. What was the response of people to you? Because I know you had friends, you had neighbors. How did they respond to this attack?
They said, this is not Islam. We shouldn't do this. And some people, they were really sorry. I had one guy midst in the city coming up out of his shop and really starting to cry, and said to me, this is not who we are. This is not what we people are. And this is the truth. This is not the neighbors I know. And because when this happened, the neighbors came, they helped us. They made the tea for the people. And there's a rule that if in a house someone dies, 3 days the neighbors bring the food to the people. So we had so many visitors. It was around 80 people. So they brought 3 days for lunch and for dinner for 80 people meal. So that was really something. They really enjoyed doing this. And other people came then after that and said, oh, we also want to bring food to your house. So there you could see that's not the people. It must have been something else.
And I know also that the church, not just your congregation, but the Christian body across Turkey really gathered in and they kind of experienced this all together. Is that kind of what you would say too?
Yeah, that was really like a community was shaken, but at the same time, all the pastors were together. They helped each other, and we got help from other cities, and it was really like a big family.
The family of God, which we are thankful for. We're talking today on Voice of the Martyrs Radio with Susanne Geske. She is the widow of Tilmann Geske, who was killed in 2007 in the city of Malatya, Turkey. Susanna, the Bible talks about God as being the husband to the widow, the father to the fatherless. How have you experienced that in the 15 years since Tilmann was killed?
It's really true. I can say that he really watched over my kids. I could never have grown them up like this because they're all three great believers going with the Lord. For me, this is every morning a new miracle. Because I was shouting at them and getting crazy, but the Lord really made it good. It's not easy to grow three teenagers on your own. With all my troubles, I could always come to the Lord and I always could talk to him, and had the impression whenever I was really down and really sad, because it wasn't my decision, and I would say, you put me into this mess, so it's your responsibility to help me, because it wasn't my choice. And always he would have something, either a phone call, someone would come, or something would happen. So he always would look after me.
I love that prayer. Lord, you put me in this situation, so you got to take care of me. And like you say, he's been faithful to do that. What is the state of the Christians in Turkey right now? I think for most of us Americans, when we think of Turkey and Christians, we think of Pastor Brunson being in prison for 2 years. Obviously, he was an American citizen, not a Turkish citizen. What is it like to be a Christian in Turkey today? Is it better than it was 15 years ago? Is it worse? Is it the same?
I don't think it's better. I wouldn't really say it's worse. It's always going up and down.
Mm-hmm.
So these days, for foreigners, it's quite hard. You won't get any visa anymore. There's no tourist visa. It's really, really hard to come in this country if you don't have a visa or a work platform or whatever. And then for Turks, it's not so easy because if you put in your identity card Christian, because there is a part that says religion. So you put either Islam, nothing, or Christian. Then they won't get a job, or hard. It's really hard for them to get a job. And they have restrictions. They can't really work in jobs from the state, like being a teacher in a normal state school or work in whatever. So some of our friends do, but they really have to shut their mouth, not to say anything. So yeah, this is hard for them. And the other side is this thinking of, yeah, we can do something to these Christians because our people up there, they will say, you did a good job. But on the other side, lots of people here are really fed up with Islam, because in school, everywhere you have it, and in every subject of school subject. So we have lots of people coming to church and searching, and the internet is full. Because of Corona, the church started to have their Zoom meetings and stuff. So also some of them have really every Sunday over YouTube. You can watch the services. And so it's spread far more. Because of COVID, it really spread a lot. And people were searching in the internet. So people coming. It's like on the one side, it got more press. On the other side, the people really coming more.
I think particularly of COVID, and we've heard this story in other countries as well, that people were locked in at home. Nobody was necessarily looking over their shoulder. Like they could search the internet in privacy and not have to explain to their loved ones, hey, why are you looking at the Bible? Why are you searching for Christian material? Is that true in Turkey as well?
Yes, true as well. I know at least one person I know by heart. She became a believer in COVID, and she always said, I'm an internet believer, because for a whole year she had no contact with a real Christian. She only had Zoom meetings and stuff.
When you think about Tilmann's legacy, what do you think that is? How would you describe his legacy?
He was a really, really good preacher. I know that lots of people from our church say that they, especially in the beginning, really missed his preaching. And then a musician, because he wrote 2 songs, and one song is sang in the whole community of Turkey. So all the churches sing his song. I don't think he wanted to sacrifice life. If you would have asked him the day before, he would have said no, because we had a exact 10 days before we watched the film Quo and where the Roman Christians came and they were eaten up by the lions. And we were watching that film, and both of us were like, we're not ready to die for Jesus. And a week later, he was dead. So I don't think you can say that.
That's fascinating to me. A week later, he was ready. So the Lord helped him prepare, or prepared him, or something to make him ready.
Yeah, something like this.
It's amazing how the Lord does that. I mean, how he, at that moment, he is with us and he works with us and through us. And you certainly experienced that in being able to witness for the gospel in the midst of shock and grief and all of those things. Mm-hmm. One of the things we try to do on Voice of the Martyrs Radio is help people to pray. We want to help our listeners to pray. What are some specific ways we can pray for Turkey right now?
I think you first can pray for the Christian that they really stick to their faith, because lots of them are interested. Then they go through the baptism classes, they get baptized. But after that, some people stay, some people right away fell, some people have troubles with their family or with their work, and then they fell apart or so. So that they really can stick to their belief, what they believe in, and that they really read their Bible and try to stay with Jesus. I think this is, for me, always is very important to see people really staying with Jesus. And the other thing is, of course, for our workers, that we still have them. Not always people have to leave the country, because lots of pastors had to leave the country. So churches were on their own and had really trouble. I also have a project for the East, because we live here in the east of Turkey. So my big dream and prayer request is to finally can buy land to build retreat center in the east of Turkey, because we have 2 in Turkey in the west, totally, like from here is about 1,300 kilometers, but here in the east there's nothing. So when there is family camps, children's camps, or pastors want to have it in retreat or whatever, there's no place to go. So this is our dream, and we started to pray and to ask for support to buy land, and then slowly, surely build something on top of it. This is my little baby.
Susanna, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing with us. And I do hope that our listeners will pray for you and pray for Turkey. And thank you for your faithfulness and just what an example of keeping on serving the Lord, even after loss, even after grief, but keeping on serving the Lord. So thank you for sharing with us.
You're very welcome.
You've been listening to the Voice of the Martyrs Radio. We've been talking with Susanne Geske. She has lived in Turkey since 1997. She is the widow of Tilmann Geske, who was killed in 2007 in the city of Malatya. If you are just tuning in, you can hear this entire conversation at our website, vomradio.net. You can also find Voice of the Martyrs Radio wherever you listen to podcasts. And I hope you'll be back with us next week as we continue to explore what God is doing around the world in hostile and restricted nations, even sometimes when it is very costly to follow Jesus. We'll talk more about that next week right here on the Voice of the Martyrs Radio Network.